Hey, what's up? It's Amanda and I am back with another video. So today's video is going to be my November wrap up. I know it's kind of gonna be up a little late for a wrap up. It is December 8th when I'm filming this, so I know I'm already like a week behind. So, oh well. I wanted to get this video up so we could talk about all the books that I've read in the month of November. So without further ado, let's get right on into the video. Now, as you all know, typically I like to go over my statistics for each month. I didn't do that last month because I was wrapping up September and October, and frankly that would be a lot of statistics to go over for 2 months worth of reading. But for November, I read 6 books. Now, although I read 6 books, I have 7 books to share with you because I had 1 DNF, and the story graph doesn't count DNFs in like the books you've read. You know what I mean? Because like technically I didn't finish it. I read a total of 2,567 pages, and then it says I read for 0 hours via audiobook. But as I always like to say, that statistic is wrong because typically what I do when I read books is I'll listen to the audiobook while physically reading it. So I did read a lot of audiobooks in November. Then a fun little stat that the story graph has been adding is the average time it took to finish your books throughout the month. And for me, it took an average of 8 days for me to finish 1 book. All right, so the next statistic that we have are the moods breakdown. My top moods were mysterious, emotional, dark, and adventurous. Those are the 4 biggest ones. And then the other 2 that are mentioned but aren't as big as those 4 are tense and funny. So a lot of dark, emotional books this month. As for pacing, 67% of my books were medium paced, which means 4 of my books were medium paced, and 2 of my books, or 33%, were fast paced. The next statistic is page number. So I had 1 book that was less than 300 pages, or 17% of my reads were less than 300 pages. The majority of my reads were 300 to 499 pages long. So about 67% of my reads were that long. And then I had 1 book, or 17% again, that was 500 plus pages. As for fiction versus nonfiction breakdown, I read 0 nonfiction this month, and I read all fiction, so 100% fiction. Then for genres, I had 2 fantasy books and then a bunch of like one-off, categories or genres. So LGBTQIA is 1, magical realism, young adult, thriller, literary, horror, historical, graphic novel, crime, and contemporary are all tied for 1. So a lot of the books that I read this month had multiple genres associated with them, not just like, oh, it was a thriller. No, it was like a historical fantasy, type of thing. So that's that. And then as for tags, if you don't follow me and you've never seen one of my wrap-ups, you will not have heard about the tags that I use on the story graph. So basically, I use the tags to track how many books I've owned, how many ARCs I've read, how many library books I've read, and then how many Kindle Unlimited books I've read. But I mostly use the tags to track how many books I physically own that I've read in the month. In the month of November, I read 4 of my owned books. I do have a 5th physical book here with me that was the DNF, so it's technically 5 owned books that I went through. I read 1 ARC and 1 library book. And then as for format, 1 book I read completely digitally via my Kindle, and then all the rest I read via print, but this is more so like print and audio, so they would be about the same. And then my star ratings, I had 2 5 stars, 2 4.25 stars, and 2 4 stars for an average of 4.42 stars, which is like really good. I think that's the highest average rating that I've ever had in a month. So I think that's pretty good. Now onto the books. So we're going to talk about the DNF first. don't come for me, but I started reading Everything I Know About Love by Dolly Alderton, her memoir, and I absolutely hated it. I'm so sad because I always hear people, like women in their 20s, being like, this is the book to pick up if you're a woman in your 20s. So I was like, yeah, I'm in my 20s. I'm a woman. Like, let's do that. I did not like this. This book is about Dolly Alderton's time in her 20s, figuring out her relationships and figuring out how to drink and still go to work while hungover. I don't know. I didn't really like this because all Dolly was doing was partying a lot, going out to clubs, doing drugs and drinking. And then the part that really lost me was the part where her best friend gets engaged and she gets upset with her best friend for getting engaged. And I was like, okay, I'm putting it down. Like, I was like, I'm done. I think I was a third of the way through and I was like, I cannot read anymore. I was also trying to annotate this while reading. This was my first time annotating, and yeah, I barely annotated in this because I was like, I actually hate this book. So cancel me if you want, but this is not my fave memoir. So that's the DNF. Next, we are going to go over the one library book that I had in the month of November. I read Lights by Brenda Thumler. This is the last book in the Sheets graphic novel series about Marjorie, who is dealing with the death of her mother and grieving the death of her mother while she's in middle school, trying to navigate friendships and bullies. And then she meets Wendell, who is a sheet ghost, and Wendell is trying to navigate his grief as well because he is dead, he is a ghost. And they become best friends, and it's just kind of about them. It's kind of a coming of age story, but more so like around the age of like middle school. Because Marjorie at the end of Lights, this is not a spoiler, but at the end of Lights, she's like preparing for high school and talking about like, oh, next year we're going to be in high school. So she's not like a 15, 16, 17-year-old. She's like a 12-year-old, 13-year-old. So it was cute. I enjoyed it. I think this one, let me see my star rating real quick. So my star rating for Lights was a 4-star. I thought it was fun. I thought it was cute. I like the themes in the book. But it didn't stick out to me as much as other graphic novels have. But yeah, I do recommend that you read it, especially if you think that those topics are things that will help you. But trigger warning for a lot of talk of grief. If that's a trigger for you, then avoid this book, this series. The next book that I'm going to talk about is the ebook that I read. This was an ARC that I was sent. So this book that I'm talking about is It Will Only Hurt for a Moment by Delilah S. Dawson. So thank you so much to the publisher Del Rey and to NetGalley for allowing me to read an early ARC of this. Admittedly, I think I finished it a little after the book came out. I did start it before the release date, but it took me a while to get through it because I didn't have the audiobook for it and I'm kind of in a reading slump. So, but this book came out October 22nd and I finished it November 8th. So I was like 2 weeks off, I think. But I highly recommend that you read this book, especially, there's Pearl. I made her a sweater, by the way. That's what she's wearing. And she has a bed right there, so it's in the kitchen. So she's just gonna be chilling in the background. Anyways, I highly recommend that you read this book. I do want to say trigger warnings. Check trigger warnings before going into this. There's a lot of gaslighting and yeah, mostly gaslighting to be honest, but there's also like, it's a horror and there's like some gruesome stuff that happens in this book. I loved the atmosphere of this book. I thought it was really well done. Delilah S. Dawson does amazing with creating like a haunting atmosphere, like an eerie, creepy atmosphere. And the setting also helped with that. I thought that The characters were kind of caricatures a little bit of themselves, just the ones that were not super important to the plot. Like the ones that were important to the plot were very well fleshed out. I just think that some of the other side characters that weren't the main focus of the story kind of felt a little bit two-dimensional. Is that the phrase? They felt a little two-dimensional instead of three-dimensional. And I think that the message behind this book, pointing out like domestic abuse and domestic violence against women, is such an important message. And so again, trigger warnings for that. If that's something you can't handle, then definitely don't read this book, because it's like very much the main focus of this book. And I just thought it was really well done. I gave this book a 4.25 stars. It wasn't quite a 5. I didn't get that 5-star feeling from it, but I do highly recommend this one. I just love Delilah S. Dawson's writing, and I'm excited to pick up more from her. I'm hoping to pick up Guillotine, I think is the other book that she came out with this year. So I'm hoping to pick that one up soon, but until then, we'll see. The next book that I read in the month of November was The 10,000 Doors of January by Alex E. Harrow. I do have a vlog coming out that is talking about my thoughts about this book. I realized that I didn't film like an outro clip to the vlog, so that's taking a little bit of time, but it will be the next video that comes out on my channel. Anyways, this one follows our main character January, as she is not the daughter, but like she is taken care of by this very well-off Englishman. She assumes he's like an Englishman, but he's very much a well-to-do man living in New England in the United States. So she's kind of like his ward, not necessarily his child, but he employs her father. Anyways, that is besides the point. She finds out that there's magic and that there are doors that lead to other worlds, and that it kind of follows her discovering this as she is being hunted. And I didn't know much going into it, and that's what I kind of recommend. It just kept me guessing, and it kept me on the edge of my seat, not knowing what was actually the plot and what the description was. I really enjoyed this one. I love Alex E. Harrow's writing. I read a few other books for this vlog by Alex E. Harrow because it's an author taste test. And spoiler alert, but I think their writing is beautiful. So yeah, but definitely check out that vlog. It's coming up as the next video that I'm putting out. So you'll get my in-depth thoughts about this and the other books that I read in that video. The next book that I read was Heir of Fire by Sarah J. Maas. This book is the third in the series, and let me just tell you, I am so invested in this series. This was definitely a 5-star for me. I think this is my favorite in the series so far. I just think that everything that Selena is going through is so gripping and thrilling and intriguing. Had me on the edge of my seat. All of her character development as well. I'm just like, girl, I'm living for this. So since this is the third in the series, I'm not going to give you a synopsis. I'm just going to say this was 5 stars. Highly recommend. Even though Sarah J. Maas is a little questionable from what I've heard, I do enjoy her books. Yeah. I don't know what that says about me, but whatever. The next book that I read was They Never Learn by Lane Fargo. This is a book that I've been highly anticipating, and I've had it on my TBR for like years. We are following our main character, Dr. Clark, who is a professor at this university, and she is low-key a serial killer. She kills men that have done harm to women. You're also following the perspective of a student. Basically what's happening is that there is a small investigation on the most recent killing, and it kind of leads the investigative team down a path where they suspect that someone is killing off all these men. So Dr. Clark is like scrambling, trying to figure out how to get away with it. And there's so much in this book. Oh, I just loved it so much. Our main character, Dr. Clark, is so morally gray. I just thought it was amazing. I love the audiobook. I read the audiobook a lot because I read it on my drive to and from my boyfriend's, which is like a 2-hour drive. But it was such a good audiobook. I really am so glad that I read this. I gave this a 4.25. It didn't give me 5-star energy, but upon reread, it could, I think. So we'll see about that, but I highly recommend that you read this one. And lastly, the last book that I read in the month of November was Nothing to See Here by Kevin Wilson. This is kind of like a magical realism book because it's set in our real world and it's following our main character who becomes the nanny to these children, but these children spontaneously burst into flames. So that's like the magical realism-esque part of the story. That's the only like fantasy kind of magical element to the book. But we are just following their relationship, the children's relationship with our main character and our main character's relationship with the children and with their parents and all that. It is so heartwarming. It is so cute. It is also very, very short. It's like under 300 pages. It's like about 250 pages. And I read this so quickly. I could have read this in one sitting if I really like wanted to, but I read this over a couple days and it was just so good. I gave this one 5 stars because I just think the writing was so amazing and the character relationships were so heartwarming, and also it like tugged at your heartstrings. You know, it was just like so, not so emotional, but like I was just emotionally invested. So yeah, these are all of the books that I read in the month of November. Please comment down below if you've read any of these books and what you thought of them. I would love to know. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like, comment down below, and subscribe to my channel if you aren't already. If you don't know what to say in the comments, comment down below a bird emoji, just cause. Why not? I always have my social medias linked in the description down below. I have Instagram, TikTok, Threads, the Storygraph, and Goodreads. So follow me or friend me on those. I don't know what's going on with TikTok, so, and I don't know what to do about that. I might just delete my account, but let me know your opinions on the TikTok drama. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see y'all in the next one. Bye.